this year before rising to 4% in 2023. Africa is our playground, colleagues. This is where we should be investing. Among the BRICS grouping, growth in India is projected to remain at a stable 9%. That is big for an emerging economy in 2022, but dip to 7.1% in 2023. And in contrast, a considerable output drop is predicted for Brazil, with a sharp fall of 0.3% in 2022 and a marginal increase of 1.6% in 2023, while growth rates is estimated for South Africa, like I said, 1.9% in 2022 and 1.4% in the outer year, 2023. So what does it mean for South Africa, ladies and gentlemen? So the projections by National Treasury expects our South African economy to slow down to 2.2%, with a further decline, like I said, of 1.6%. And despite South Africa's gain from rising commodity prices, the COVID pandemic and the recent social unrest, as you remember in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, had the interrupted electricity supply, we just saw that right now, due to load shedding, and they exert a notable adverse impact on economic activity, to local production and total productivity, as well as employment growth. So those are some of our challenges that we're seeing in South Africa that is affecting our growth, and that is why we aren't able to grow as strongly as we anticipated to be. So the annual inflation rate in South Africa rose to 5.9% in December 2021, prompting the South African Reserve Bank to raise the interest by 25 basis points, and this contractionary policy was caused by a marginal reduction by inflation at 5.7% in 2022. Which was January this year. So the latest Monetary Policy Committee statement, which was also released in January, affirms an expected average inflation of 4.9% for 2022. Not very good news for bankers in terms of lending, but in terms of interest, very good news for bankers there. But I believe that also further to that, commodity prices, you saw that increase in GDP, specifically with regards to the weaker dollar, assisted us in terms of our growth in GDP. So with rising oil and fuel prices and electricity costs, it's anticipated that inflation rate will move below 5% level in the second year. Now, I'm able to talk firmly about my province, but some of the reforms that we're doing across the country is also succinctly aligned to what it is that we're doing in the province. But I'm going to talk firmly, Doc, if you don't mind, about some of our work, and I can make commitments in that regard. When it comes to national departments and other provincial departments and local municipalities, I can't. So we looked at this as an executive. We looked at it in a Lekgotla. We went out to public participation. We went to areas of the most rural environments, trying to understand the biggest challenges in the province. And partly what we realize is that the weak economic outlook that spurred our province was because we were not looking at alternative solutions. And one of those solutions is to prioritize local procurement. But not only local procurement, we are stating that we have to prioritize the value chain. I'll tell you why. I'm going to make a short example, and I think the rest of my conversation is going to be 10 minutes. During COVID, we had to deal with the social distancing. We had to close up events, the tourism sector. And as Treasury, we consolidated the procurement of PPEs, protective clothing. And what we did was our policy and our specifications spoke about broad-based procurement, meaning that more people would come in and be able to supply government with masks, sanitizers, the equipments and everything else that we needed. Why are we saying that we have to prioritize local and value chains? Was because, let's say one supplier, a young person from our province, who received the direct contract between Treasury and that supplier, let's say it was for 4 million. That supplier would purchase whatever it was, the sanitizers, the masks, outside of our province. So 3 million would go to KZN or to Gauteng. The million would come back to the province, but not in its entirety, because there's a VAT portion, there's a cost and expense portion, that interest before EBITDA and all of those things from accounting when we did that then. So this poor person is left with, let's say 200,000. That's what we record in our province as tax. That's what we record in our province as growth. That's what we record in our province as money flow. And that is why the province is still contributing 5.2% to gross domestic product across all provinces or across the country. And if we do not find ways to deal with production or manufacturing, because GDP is calculated by the total goods and services and products that are within the market, within that various region or province. If we do not prioritize this, if we do not prioritize production or services related within the province, you're never going to see this province grow. So in order to participate fully in the value chain and employ more local people, that's some of the reforms that we undertook as a province. But part of that, with our growth and development strategy, we also needed to support infrastructure projects, which needs to be delivered on time. We've got a very bad history of projects not being delivered on time and on budget. That's some of the work that we need to do. We need to procure, like I said, from local businesses, support SMMEs, cooperatives, owned by Africans in particular, women, youth, and disabled people, agricultural support, tourism support, and yes, our provincial government is not on e-filing, and it's something that I plan to make sure happens. I did that in the bank. I did automated leave forms in the bank. I did my automated travel in the bank. I captured everything, and I was paid whenever I needed to be paid. And I come to an environment where I have to still sign so many forms, and it's madness. But given the term, I could say, tumulus, if that's the word, macroeconomic conditions, and given labor and the fiscal challenges and all of the challenges South Africa has faced and is facing, like I said, renewable energy might be our answer. And over this term, our rising debt costs, as you know, debt to GDP is close to 72%. It's the highest it's ever been. We are looking at paying banks that we borrowed from as a country as one of the largest line items from an interest perspective. Bigger than what we spend on defense, on SAPs, on health, on education. That's paying interest to our debtors. So government debt, borrowing costs are expensive. We talk about political willingness. This can only happen if we've got the will. And we have to implement well-targeted structural reforms in order for us to make the following happen. So the way I'm going to describe it is in key economic drivers. I call it job creation and economic drivers. And I'm going to call it out quickly. It's water, electricity, land, public-private partnerships, infrastructure, technology, industrialization, investment promotion, and municipalities or local government, because job creation and economic empowerment can never happen without a local government. Cannot happen without a locality that you're operating in. So on water, just to give you some statistics, by 1994, only 51% of South African population had access to clean drinking water. By 1994. Post-apartheid, until 2020, we had increased that figure to 88.6%. But that's not enough. So apart from the municipal infrastructure grants that we have, and due to fiscal consolidation, you know it is a challenge, due to local municipalities not being capacitated to deliver this the best way they should, due to the changes in the Division of Revenue Act, some of the capital water projects have been put on hold. It's with National Water and Sanitation. We are seeing that we need to innovate when it comes to water solutions. And capital water projects are great opportunities for hydropower, hydroelectric power. It is a renewable source of energy that generates power by using dam or diversion structures to alter the natural flow of the river or other bodies of water. So you find, like in one of my districts called Karib, we've got two of the biggest dams there, and it's full. There's some sloth at the bottom because of the cleansing system. This is some of the solutions that you would bring to make sure that that water is cleansed, hydropowered engineering pumped out to the relevant areas that it needs to pump out to. And it can be providing new rural entities with fresh, clean water in a better way. Boreholes is an example. There's renewable functions and innovation on borehole technology. Those are some of the examples on water. And water is a job driver because you cannot produce or industrialize without water. On electricity, by 1994, only 36% of the South African population had their homes electrified. Only 36%. Whilst in 2020, we've increased that percentage to 84%. But now, guess what? The support of national government's effort in reforming the electricity sector to allow the competitive power supply to address electricity and sustainable supply shortage in South Africa. So we've put in some legislation, and this intervention entails the lifting of the registration threshold of embedded generation of 100 megawatts, and amendments to the Electricity Regulation Act of 2006. So it is in this spirit, our President Cyril Ramaphosa, there goes my battery. Murendeni